The following program is rated TVMA. This program contains topics and viewpoints from metaphysical professionals. Topics, conversations, insights, and experiences are meant for a mature adult audience and may not be suitable for younger viewers. All insights, experiences, and conversations contained in this show are meant as informational. Always consult either legal or medical professionals when needed. Viewer discretion is advised. Welcome to Terra Turas, the Metaphysical Roundtable. 5 professional readers coming together, including Brenda Lynn, Heather Lynn, Jamie Gibson, Reverend Pat Beers, Michael, and most importantly, you, the audience. Walk with us as we cover different aspects of the metaphysical and spiritual sides of life. Bring together our insight, experience, and discussion to a roundtable event. And now, here is tonight's host.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Terra Turas. My name is Brenda Lynn, and I'll be hosting our show tonight. Tonight, we are going to have Michael and Reverend Pat Beers in the hot seat. And after that, we are going to do a little discussion on your gut feelings, your gut intuition, that first hit. And then we're going to continue that conversation next week. Not next week, but the week after. We have something very special planned for you next week, and we'll talk about that toward the end of the show. So how is everybody today? So we have Jamie Gibson, we have Reverend Pat Beers, and we have Heather Lynn. Everybody want to say hello?
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hi.
How's everybody doing?
Doing great.
Good.
Awesome.
As long as I stop clicking on all the screens. Just to update you really quickly, Brenda, we're going to exchange Pat with Jamie for the hot seat this evening.
Oh, okay. So we're going to do a switcheroo here.
Oh, yes.
So this is my very first time ever hosting anything like this. And so we're kind of flying by the seat of my pants, but this should be fun. So we are swapping. All right. So that's interesting. This is really impromptu, Jamie. Because I had all kinds of things planned for Pat.
I can keep you on your toes.
Pat
Yes.
has bronchitis. Pat has bronchitis.
I'm sorry? Oh, you do? Oh.
Yeah. So
Okay,
that's why we
okay.
switched through.
No worries.
Okay.
I'll get you when it's my turn next time. So I think since this is the way it's going to go, we'll start with you, Jamie.
Oh.
So, yeah. So I know Jamie. We work together. We're colleagues. And along with Michael. And so I don't know a whole lot about Jamie. When Michael and I were talking about doing the show and we needed an extra person, you were the first one that came to mind. So I am, and you know, just for no reason other than I like you, and I love your bright smiley face and your beautiful eyes. So tell me about yourself and how you came to this work.
How I came to this work. I have actually been doing things like this since I was a little girl and didn't know I was, just like a lot of people say. My mother was big into astrology. My father is a geologist by trade, and he played with tarot cards, even though we weren't supposed to know about that. So it just kind of, those kinds of things were around the house, but they didn't necessarily talk about any of the spiritual, metaphysical side of stuff. It was actually taboo to talk about. So I was doing horoscope charts before I was 13 years old. I was doing the whole everything. But then as I got into my 20s, probably, I started playing more with, people would just kind of come into my office and stuff. I worked in corporate, and they would just kind of start telling me everything about themselves without me asking a single question. Someone told me I was like Mother Earth or something in the office. I'm like, no, that's great, but I got things to do. But then mid 30s, I was going through a divorce. And that's when all of this kind of opened up more, or I was exploring more. I bought my first deck of tarot cards and started playing with them. And it just kind of went off from there. I would do readings for my daughter's friends, and didn't know what I was doing, but apparently I was hitting everything. The man who is now my son-in-law, back then, he came over and he's like, "Do my cards." And and sorry, and but
I
he
know what just happened.
Heather Lynn. Jamie Gibson.
We're having some technical difficulty, apparently.
Reverend Pat
Yeah.
Beers.
We'll be right back.
Michael. And most importantly, you, the audience. Walk with us as we cover different aspects of the metaphysical and spiritual sides of life. There are insight, experience, and discussion to a roundtable event. And now, here is tonight's host.
Okay.
Good evening and welcome to everybody. This is Michael bringing you this evening.
Oh, this is fun.
If anybody has tuned into YouTube,
retrograde.
Exactly.
yeah, if anybody has tuned into YouTube, you want to turn that off because YouTube
I
will
think
play.
that happened.
Yeah.
I think that happened on my end, but I didn't have it open. But when I muted, that was really weird.
Huh.
So I'm sorry about that.
It's go with the flow night, remember?
It is.
Yeah.
So go right ahead, Jamie, as you were.
Yes, it was. So anyway, I started with tarot cards. And when I did my now son-in-law's cards back then, before we knew he was going to be my son-in-law, he just was stone cold face, didn't say anything. And I'm like, I'm probably not knowing what I'm talking about. So I'm just telling you what I get with this. He walked out to have a cigarette afterwards with my daughter. And he's like, why did you tell your mom all those things about me? She never did. And she told him I never said any of those things. So that was just more confirmation for me. And I just kind of went from there. I'd been doing readings, but I wasn't doing them professionally for a while until a really good friend of mine pushed me and said, just go do it. And here I am for the past 15, 18 years, something like that, doing it professional.
That's awesome. I really relate to the being a go-to person.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that is something that that has been an ongoing theme.
Yeah,
I can be in the grocery
tell you stuff, you know.
Exactly.
I mean, I found out things about my ex-father-in-law's life that the rest of the family didn't know, and I didn't ask him a single question. Just kind of like, you know, put it all out there, and you know, my ex's grandmother too. It was just, I just got used to being the person that held everybody's stories.
Yeah. Yep. I sure relate to that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's an interesting life. I mean, I was in corporate world for 30 plus years. So doing this quietly on the side and not showing it to the corporate world, it was an interesting combination. But again, people would just come in and tell me all kinds of stuff all the time.
Yeah. I relate to that. So what would you say is like the most rewarding or fulfilling part? What would you nail that down as?
My favorite time to work with people is when they're trying to step into their authentic self, or to start to become more aware of even their own abilities. I just really enjoy having those conversations with those people, and also just helping to kind of guide them in their own way. It just feels really good. And even if they're not going into the spiritual world, it's if they're going to the next level for themselves, those are the things that really make me really excited and happy. Like, I feel like I'm actually contributing a lot to those situations. So it just gets me, I mean, sometimes when I hang up the phone after talking to a client like that, it's like, I just want to sit in that energy for a really long time, because it just feels really great helping someone become aware of those different things about themselves. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And it doesn't surprise me about you either. Yeah, that's really awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But and right now I'm, like I said, my dad's a geologist by trade. We used to have crystals all around the house, but they weren't used as crystals necessarily. They were just pretty rocks, you know. But right now I'm in the process of getting a strong certification as a crystal healer, so I can actually put this to work more, because I've just been playing with it on the side, just like I did with the tarot cards and everything else. I guess that's just my way of getting into things, is playing quietly on the side until I feel more confident in myself with it, to share it with more people.
Well, I relate to that a lot, actually, because that's usually how I do things too. I ease in, and then I go all the way in.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I'll dabble in it for a while, and then I'm going in, and I'm all in.
To 100. You forget about the 10, 15, 20. You just go after that. But yeah, I think you and I might be like twins or something in many ways.
Yeah, I have thought that several times. A lot of the things that you say, and I've noticed that just every time we've gotten together, you know, in one of these meetings, and even when we're chatting on Facebook Messenger, you know, it's like, oh yeah, that. Oh yeah, that.
Yeah.
You conversations with you are actually very grounding for me. Or a little like bringing the magic back. I talked about that last week when Heather was sharing, you know, and all the magic was there. But I identify with some things, and you make me remember things, you know, like, oh yeah, that, you know, crystals. Yeah, I wrote something on that, you know. So
remember?
Yep, exactly. And my guess is your clients really, really connect with you strong. And really appreciate that about you. Yeah. So I'm really glad you're here. I'm really glad you were a yes to this journey that we're doing.
Sure you want me? You guys are like, yes. I'm like, okay, we'll give it a shot.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like Michael and I were I-aming. You know, I had you in one box and I had him in another, and I'm like, well, I'm talking to her, and then you, and I'm like, oh, you know, and back and forth, you know, I'm typing, and it's like, I think she's a yes. So it was awesome, and I'm glad you were. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So with that, I'd like to open it up to others to grill Jamie. So let's start with Michael. What do you got?
Oh, I got a ton of questions.
Be nice.
Oh, now she says be nice.
Remember, I'm asking you questions later.
Uh-oh.
We're experiencing technical difficulty at this time. When you are reading for people, do you find that it is... I want to say, do you find that it is essential that they be in front of you to read well for them?
No, not at all. In the beginning, I did a whole lot better if they were not in front of me, if that makes sense. Really? I started doing readings for people in chat rooms, And I would have the radio going, the kids asking me questions about their homework, all this stuff. And I was able to do the readings without seeing the person, because in the beginning, I would question myself because I'm more a clairsentient and an empath. So I just kind of know what I know, and I have no idea why I'm saying what I'm saying. So in the beginning, I would question myself a lot. But if I had things going on around me, and the person not in front of me, it just was so much easier. I mean, I'm not like most people who do readings. They've got, you know, the pretty music in the background and whatnot. It's like I've got to have noise around me, like, you know, activity around me, and I do much better that way.
Did you ever do a reading, I want to say, to a point that it was either overwhelming, that you couldn't get the information across, or it just left you dumbfounded, sitting in your chair going, because it was too much information?
Yeah. I mean, I think Heather had mentioned this last week. There have been times where it's like, how much do I share with the client? Because sometimes, once in a while, it just becomes really intense information. And so I have to kind of like sort of tiptoe into it and feel the person out to see if they're even going to be open to hearing everything that's coming through. And sometimes I'll just say it to them, and I'm like, I just write it down someplace, because they'll say it doesn't make sense. You're crazy. Write it down someplace. It might make sense later, because they're not ready to hear it yet. Does that make sense? So, you know, I just try to do my best with that. But I try to still be very honest, and I try not to hold back too much. But at the same time, you have to figure out how to deliver it.
That I have always found to be an interesting thing, delivery. Yeah. Because it's as you and Heather had mentioned before, if it is too much information, you tend to scare people off. If it's not enough information, everybody's like, okay, you know, what are you really doing here?
Right.
It's always a balancing act.
Yeah.
Did you ever run into a person in reading for them in person that their energy was of such a nature that you declined to read for them?
Yeah.
How did you handle that?
You know, it kind of depended on the person, but generally I would be, you know, trying to tell them something and it just wasn't coming through, or they were like, this isn't making sense. So I would just say, you know, I appreciate that. You know, maybe you and I just aren't the right match for this. And there's probably, and I will try to refer them to another friend or somebody who does this. But then I have had a couple of very aggressive people that I'm like, you know what, this isn't going to work for us. So I wish you the best, and I hope you find what you're looking for.
I've run into that myself. I was just curious of how did you go about handling that at the time? Because it can be...
you try not to lose your cool either if they're aggressive, because it's like, no, okay. You know, which can be challenging if they're very aggressive. And I've had that over the years happen.
Wow. Thank you.
Sure.
Awesome questions, Michael. You got a little bit of a psychic reading there, Jamie.
Did I?
Yeah. Michael was picking up on stuff. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. You know, I have another question for you too. Something that speaking of us being alike, right before I moved to Texas, not too far before you moved from California to North Carolina. Yeah. So what are some of the differences there? You can talk about that like I did.
Yeah, you know, just like what you said when you went to Texas, I had never, ever been to North Carolina, never been, but I just knew it was time to move. And I was having a hard time making ends meet in California, wherever I would have gone there. So I was like, let's just go a big move. And so I moved out here, sight unseen, never been here or anything, but this feels like home to me. And I had recently gone back to visit the family a few weeks ago. And when I came back home here, I was like, yeah, this is exactly where I belong, because it just feels, I mean, I'm still learning things around here because it's only been like 5 months, but there's a certain kind of calmness and just, it's just very grounding for me. Yeah. I'm happy.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was a good move. I mean, I miss the family, but this is the right move.
Yeah. Yep. And again, I relate to that.
I know. I think you moved because I moved, so that's my
just because of that. Yep.
Yes.
Why not? So, Pat, do you have any questions for Jamie? I think she's muted.
Or the bronchitis hit.
There we go.
There you
I
go.
relate so much of what she's saying. For me, the aggressive people usually come in person. I have been very fortunate, knock wood, that I haven't had it when I'm doing my readings with, I make them send me a letter or a note or something they can hold. And I just simply say to them, I'm sorry, we're not connecting. It's not necessarily you, it's probably me. But there are many people here who are very, very good. And I would like you to, and I'll often suggest someone and they'll go, oh, yeah, just, and that's all we can do. But it's so much fun when you bring someone peace, when you bring them some, some comfort because they have questions about a loved one that's passed or a loved one that can't communicate. And it's just, you can't buy that feeling. It's in the heart. It's in the heart.
Yeah.
And I'm like you, I've been doing it so long, I didn't know I was doing it until people told me what I was doing. And I was very young when I started. Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah, no, it's a really great feel. It's a unique feeling, and especially when I'm helping people who have family members who are preparing to cross.
Yeah,
that's one of the most special feelings you'll ever have or experience ever. And I mean, I wish other people could. I wish everybody could experience it, because it's just this peace that's incredible to do. Even though the family's going through a rough time, I mean, the process itself with the person is just really something I never expected to feel like that.
And it's kind of like we're helping them to see the pathway that they need to go down, because they're in fear or anger or whatever, and we're helping them to understand this is a process of life, and
it's
going to be there. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Very good. Heather, what you got for Jamie?
Hey, Jamie. So, yeah, I totally love what you said about people would just come to you and just spill everything, because that happens to me every day. I work 2 different jobs and they both, I mean, same thing. People just come in and I'm, grooming their dog or whatever, and you pick up a lot of energy from their pets. So you just kind of, whatever, that's a whole different thing. But yeah, just people just tell you stuff, and a lot of times
you don't even ask them to. It's like
crazy.
Yeah. I don't know why. I never understood why people did that, but people would just tell me secrets that no one else in the family or no one else in their family knew about. And I'm like, what do you do with this? You know what I mean? You're holding it for them.
Exactly. Yeah, I see you as that space holder. And like Brenda said, you're very grounded. And I just see the roots. And I feel when you said about that move to North Carolina, I felt your home. That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
So I know that we kind of talked about the passing over thing, and just like you were talking, is this something that you do? Because I've met,
it's something that's
like a death doula.
Yeah.
They have a name for it. I feel like that's kind of what you do.
Yeah, no, it's just something that's starting to happen lately. And it seems to come in pairs for whatever reason. Like, it'll be one client and then almost on the heels of that client, another one that is going through this, but then there'll be a space of not any of that happening. So I I don't call myself a medium, even though I can connect. I don't have the confidence, so I don't want to put that label on me. And I don't have the confidence to say that I'm that sort of doula or whatever. You know, I just do whatever comes in at the time. And if it doesn't feel like it's going to connect, I'm just really honest with the client. You know, I'm not going to waste their time or money. And I'm like, I'm really sorry. You know, I'm not the right pair of shoes for you. You know, go try these on over there. They may help you. But yeah, that phenomenon of people crossing has been happening more in the last 2 years than it ever did before. So I don't know if I'm starting to transition into something. I have no idea. I'm just going with what comes.
Oh, that's interesting. I just feel the synchronicity of it, and you have that space holding ability that's really nice.
Thank you.
I'm glad you're here too.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Awesome. Anybody else have any questions for Jamie? Because she's almost off the hot seat.
Yeah.
What's so fun about Jamie is, even though we all just met, when you talk to her, you feel like you've known her forever. There's none of this getting to know you and, you know, how's this person going to be? It's just like you just fit, you know. So that's cool.
Thanks. No,
True that, sister. That is true. Yeah.
I'm honored to be a part of this group. It's not something I knew that was coming into my experience, so it was a nice surprise to see.
When Brenda had turned around and mentioned, you know, I've got this other person to work as a reader, and she told me, Jamie, I'm like, okay, one, I trust Brenda, so yeah, but it felt right. And then I saw your picture, I'm like, yeah, hands down, that's got to happen.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Yes.
It's a fun job.
So true.
It's a fun, I guess it's not really a job, but it's a fun path to go down here, what we do.
Yep, it has its ups and downs. But it's a very, I don't know, I find it very rewarding. Purposeful, meaningful is what it feels like to me. Yeah.
My biggest challenge is just taking care of myself through all of it, because, you know, being the empath, it's, if I don't do what I'm supposed to do, and I have a susceptibility to depression in my family anyway, if I'm not taking care of myself, I start to go down with it, you know. So grab my crystals, do my little clearings and everything as best as I can. I'm just so impatient or something. I just keep on going and forget, oh, stop, go back here and clear up, you know, because I'm just jumping into the next thing.
I do have a question for Jamie. Jamie, when we're reading for people or talking with them, and you find something you know is going to be upsetting to them, I feel like you would also find a way to plant the seed. You may not let it grow very far, but you give them some kind of so that they're going to follow that little trail, if you will. And
and that's one thing too that I'm very big on telling clients, like, if you're not happy with what you're hearing, this path that you're on, this is what it is in the moment, and you've got free will. You can decide to go left instead of right. So, you know, if I do have something that comes through that, you know, is not necessarily what they want to hear, I'm very kind about it, but I'm also very straightforward, and I try to help them see another alternative or see the learning from the situation so that they can make another decision to move.
Right. It's kind of preparing them, I guess.
Yeah.
Know that there's something coming.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't do fairy tales. I just don't. I wish I did, but I don't.
Yeah, we are twins. Definitely twins. Yeah.
That's good to know.
Oh, that was fun.
Yeah.
So now I think we're going to move on to Michael.
Yay.
So
we are suddenly experiencing technical difficulty. Yeah. We thank you for joining.
We are so not experiencing technical difficulty.
Yeah.
Nice try, though.
Well, I got to do something.
I met Michael 9 or 10 years ago. I don't know if it was 2009 or 2010. We met at a work event, we connected right away. It was I don't know how many people there were there, maybe 5 of us or so, and 3 of us really connected. But Michael and I have there was a period until recently when he and I have gotten busy with other things, that we would chat daily on Facebook, pretty close to daily, I would say. And we've always talked about doing something together, like a show or an audio or a discussion or something like that. And then all of a sudden, a couple of months ago, he was like, Shazam, let's do it now. And so we started this. But before this, I watched Michael write a book, and watched him get that, go through the whole process and find an editor. And, I got to pre-read some of the stuff, that he wrote, and just watched. We probably have watched each other grow, but I've certainly, speaking from where I'm sitting, I definitely have watched him grow and expand. I would say he's a little more relaxed than he used to be, and more open, definitely more open. And
Pat could tell you stories. Honest to God, Pat
I feel honored to call him my friend because he is a very good friend.
Aww.
I've known him for a while. And so I want to introduce you to Michael. And you go ahead, Michael. Tell us about yourself. Tell us how you came to this work. And, I would really like to know.
Here it comes.
What happened when the light bulb went off and all of a sudden we're here doing Terra Turas?
Say the last part one more time. When the light bulb went off and I did what?
What's that?
You said when the light bulb went off, but I didn't.
Yeah, what started that? When did the light bulb just go off? What triggered that? Because I never did ask you that.
5 years old, the light bulb went off. 45 years ago.
Yeah.
I just turned 50 this year, so people will know. I've earned all my gray hair. Trust me. When I was 5, and again, like so many different people, growing up in the church, we did not talk about any of this. Yeah, the family didn't talk about it. You most certainly didn't talk about it in church. So it was a hit and miss kind of thing. And as I mentioned last week, being able to talk to my grandfather, being able to talk to a few people. But when I was 5, it was almost right after my birthday, there was a family funeral. And I remember asking questions because I could not understand why I was seeing the family member in the casket and watching her walking around talking to people. And I watched, and I would literally watch her walk around and touch people on the shoulder, and these people would react. Until finally some of my family, you're supposed to pay attention. Look up here at what's going on. But I'm watching, and they're like, no, you're not. Oh, okay. So I found that if I said the truth, I would get in trouble. So I didn't talk about it. As I turned 7, that turned into premonition to a point where, and it happened so much more when I went to my father's house. My mom and my dad were divorced when I was very young. But it happened so much more at my father's house. And I don't know why. But I would dream something at night. And the next day, it would come true. Now, I learned very early on at that point that if I spoke about it and told somebody, hey, this is going to happen. And it made me angry at first when I was young. If I told someone about it, it never came about. It never happened. It's like at the time I didn't know it, but I was helping someone avert a bad crisis or something wrong. But I found, if I didn't say anything, I would sit back and it would play out just like the movie that happened in my head the night before, the dream. So more often than not, I would tell somebody, this is going to happen and that's going to happen. Kind of shut it off as I became a little bit more church-centric. I'm still very much a Christian, hands down, very firm belief in God. Been baptized, spoke with my minister about it. But when I turned 16, somebody had bought me a deck of tarot cards, and a very, very good friend of mine asked, he was more joking than anything, and I took him out of the box and I shuffled him and laid him out in the standard Celtic cross. And I remember standing there, and I remember hearing my voice, but it wasn't me that was really talking. And my friend was just standing on the other side of this mini bar, breakfast bar. And the more I spoke, the whiter he got, very pale. And I finally stopped. He said, I've never told you some of those things. Who did you talk to? I said, this is what I saw. And that was my first experience of a gift running its course in what it should do and ruining a friendship. And that's when I found that you have to set some limitations of things that you will do or will not do, or people that you'll read for, people that you won't. That was at 16. We get into my upper 20s, and things are really humming along metaphysically. And that's when I met my mentor. His name was Richard Black. Lived in Tennessee. We spent hours on the phone, and he was mentoring me and coaching me and helping me understand how fundamentals really worked and how they worked in conjunction or in tandem with other aspects of life or with other capability. The do's and don'ts, really, if you want to call it that. And then off I went. I was in a job that traveled the United States, Canada, and over into England. I did that for almost 5 years. I was gone almost every week during the year, and it was difficult. But during those travels, I ran into and I had the capability to interface with so many different types of people. Blue-collar workers, white-collar workers, upper management, CEOs, firemen, you name it. And I would read for all these people while I was on the road for 4.5 years. And then I went to corporate America, worked in the IT field for a while, and finally one day I came home and I looked at Shelley, and this was after I had met Pat. And Pat was the one that really helped me kind of get into some of the local fairs and meeting some of the other local readers, and then traveling with her to Virginia Beach for an astrological conference, which it felt so odd being a psychic at an astrological conference. I had all these other people with charts and all kinds of paperwork and books, and I'm sitting here with nothing. And they're looking at me going, well, what do you do? I just wanted to get a big fat Crayola crayon and start coloring or something, But it was such an interesting time because I met some wonderful people down there. But I came home the one day from work and I looked at Shelley. I said, honey, I'd been reading now for a while with a lady and her capability up in Michigan. Her name was Joan St. John. And I was able to work on her site for a while. I came home and said, honey, I need to stop doing my day job because it's hampering who I am. And we sat down, we crunched the numbers, and she goes, okay, go for it. And I had so many people tell me it was the most foolish move that I would ever make, that it was the wrong thing. How could I be so self-centered and not supportive of my family, and many things like this. Irritating. And that was 12 years ago. and since then, I have authored a book called The Einstein Principle. I have put out one of a set of guided meditation CDs, and this is what I do. And then when this idea for this show came about, Brenda was the first one that I called, and here's what I'm thinking. Do you think we can do this? And Shelley, my wife, remarked on this, Brenda. We talked about it. She goes, Brenda, and I told her, I said, and then I called Brenda. She goes, yeah, she was the first one you called. You spoke with her before you spoke to me about it. And I went, oh shit, I think I'm in trouble. And Shelley looked at me. She goes, no. She goes, I think it was Brenda that said the phrase. She goes, she's your work wife. And I laughed. And Shelley goes, no. She goes, I'm serious. She goes, you two argue with each other like you're married or you're siblings. She goes, and Brenda just is your work wife. She goes, and it's good that people have that. And I sat there. I scratched my head. I'm like, I'm lucky to be married to a lady like that. That has that kind of understanding to allow me to do what I do. It's just fantastic. Anyhow, in a nutshell, that's me.
Awesome. That's awesome. And so what was it that triggered Terra Turas? Because you had talked about that, you'd thought about the name and everything before we spoke. So what was that thing that happened?
I want to say almost like I have multiple identities in my life, but that's kind of misleading, okay? I do many things in my life, okay? Not only do I work as a reader, and that's my career, that's my actual vocation, but I started a company with my son Alex, and part of that was doing another web radio show for that particular aspect of life. And a gentleman up in Canada by the name of Bill Tarling was helping me craft and understand how to use software and how to frame shots and how to do things. And literally I woke up one morning and went, wait. And it was like all these puzzle pieces fell together from conversations you and I have had, from conversations that Pat and I have had. And believe it or not, from the first time that I ever met Heather when we did a radio show together for Beth and Barry Gilmer. Right after the show, within 5 minutes, I walked out and I told my wife, Shelley, I said, sweetheart, this is a lady that I have got to work with at some point, somehow. She goes, why? I said, I don't know. I got to work with her. Hands down. So when this all started to come together, all these little pieces, we pretty much knew right away, the four of us. Jamie, thank God, said yes and became a fifth. We were chasing a couple of other people, and those people just evaporated, which is fine. But I knew the four right here, plus then there's Jamie. Hands down, it was easy at that point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense.
Okay.
One of the things that you were talking about, when you were talking about reading for your friend, I had to write down what I wrote. I relate to that because there's getting the reading, and kind of pulling it in and letting it out. And sometimes I have gotten in that reading, but I need to also be reading what's in front of me, or on the phone with me. So that I'm gauging it, what's going on. So I like that you mentioned that I think that's really important. Like if anybody is thinking about reading for others, that really matters. You gotta know what's going on with the person you're reading. And Jamie brought that up too. I think Pat talked about it. I think we all did, actually. All of you did, which is knowing what, planting the seed, I think is what Pat said when she was talking to Jamie. Knowing what we should talk about and when we shouldn't. We don't have to deliver every single thing we get. Can you imagine how exhausting that would be?
People, it would turn their hair white. It really would.
Yeah.
I think it would. I think there would be some people that it would literally scare the hell out of them. You know, how do we know what we know? And if we told them to the detail of things sometimes that we do see, and on that side, you're talking the positive and the negative sides of life.
Right.
People would run away screaming.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of times I just won't read. I mean, I just sometimes most of the time, actually, if I'm working, I'm working. If I'm not working, they need to leave me alone. And that I mean, I have a real, because it's a little boring reading people all the time if that's all you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you got to have some downtime, you know. Yeah. So let me open it up. Let me start with Heather. Heather, what questions do you have? What do you want to hear from Mike?
Well, I want to say, first of all, my boyfriend totally has a work wife. And I've totally said the same thing to him. And it's a joke. And it's really, we're both blessed to have his work wife. Let's just say that. I totally relate. So the Terra Turas, I remember you having a different name for us.
I did.
I can't remember what it is though, but I remember, it felt so divinely inspired. It was just like, and I remember you sent me one of your meditations, and oh my gosh, it was so powerful. I did it a few times, and I would just write stuff down, and it was so powerful. I could just, your voice when my eyes are closed is just, I can't explain it. It just, you were born to do this. So comforting, and it's just amazing. You have that voice, and it just totally took me to another place, exactly where I needed to be, like this, you know, when my mind is just, I really need to meditate and I just can't seem to clear the clutter away. For some reason, your voice just takes me there without even having to try.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. Shoot, I forgot my question. No, I know my question. So have you ever, I know like Brenda was saying, you got to turn it off. You got to say, hey, but have you ever just been out in public? And I know it's funny because people think that like literally we just walk around reading people, and that would be absolutely exhausting. I mean, we don't do that. You don't just tap into people's energy without, you know, their permission. But have you ever just had something come to you so strongly oh no.
I think.
Oh no, I can't see you.
I can see you.
My battery is. Oh.
We can see you. Nope.
There she went.
That was the end of Heather for the evening, because she had said that her laptop battery was going to go dead. Unfortunately.
Well, I'm glad I started with her.
Yeah. So I'll just answer real quick for that particular aspect. I think we have all been in or near or around the situation to say, hey, we get out in public and it's like, there are times you can't help yourself. You bump into somebody, you run into somebody. Thankfully, most of the time it is not cumbersome or overly melodramatic of a nature. You know, sometimes we run into it. It's pure yuck. She might be coming back. Mm-hmm. We'll find out. And sometimes it could be one of those rare instances where it's like, this is going to be nice. This is going to work. I have run into, on occasion, difficult portions that are like, I don't know how to handle them. So I walk away. And I've run into occasions to where it is such an overwhelming feeling, I will walk up to somebody and say, can I give you a hug and tell you something? And you can tell within the first couple of seconds that a person is either going to be okay and either hesitant and accepting, or I don't know you, back off. Right. And if it is to a point where they're accepting, I'll give them a hug. And then I'll tell them what I'm supposed to tell them. And I'll say, okay, that's the end of my job. I've got to go. I hope you have a great day. And I'll leave so that there's no, we're not going to butt heads. We're not going to anything. You get the message out, get it done, let it go. She looks like she's pointing. Oh, we can see her sitting.
Yeah, she's coming in and out.
She probably put her phone up.
Okay, so Pat.
Yes,
how
ma'am.
about you? Yeah. What do you got for Michael?
Michael, did you find, well, it's still to this day, but early on that sometimes, like I've been playing bridge. I played bridge this afternoon. I played with some of these gals since 1971. And there's always been 8 of us, and there are only 3 of us left, the originals. But I would find myself picking up on things that I could not say to them. And they'd see this look on my face, and I go, oh, I was just thinking about work, or I was thinking about, how do you, I tell Spirit now, I consider it an invasion of privacy. And if it's not something I can share with them, don't tell me, because I don't want to carry that around. I know somebody's husband's fooling around, or some wife is fooling around, and like, oh, I ain't going there.
No.
How do you work with it? I love what you said about giving them a hug. That is perfect.
The only time I will pass information along is if it is a positive, uplifting, that it can help someone in their life during that day, during that moment, or that beyond a shadow of a doubt that it is a message from someone that has passed, and it is so short that you can spit it out in less than 10 words. Because I don't want to walk up to somebody and blah, 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 blah. You can give them a half an hour speech.
Right.
I want to be able to walk up. Hi, my name is Michael. I just have a short message for you. It doesn't happen all that often. Thank God. I'm not the Long Island medium. Hands down.
Yeah.
We can all do what she does. I know that we can. It is my choice not to. Right. Because I won't even say what I'm thinking. That's just dead wrong. It's just, for me, it is not a comfortable experience over a course of many different people. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think it makes perfect sense to me. And I think too that that sometimes it can be overbearing if we do that sort of thing. It can also be arrogant. There are all kinds of ideas that people could have about that. I feel like it's important to be asked most of the time. Yeah, I could not do what Long Island Medium does. There's no way. So let's go. I'm sorry.
Do you all, especially Michael, too, do you find it to be a double-edged sword? People think, oh, it must be so wonderful to be psychic. But and I go, you folks have no idea the responsibility that we carry, and it's a double-edged sword.
It is. It is the one thing, Pat, that you and I have spoken about it many times. People don't understand. We don't always pick and choose what we see. Yeah. We get pictures, we get little movie clips, we get emotion. You don't get to say yes or no. If you're going to be a reader, that's an automatic yes. You see whatever they show you, and you feel whatever comes in. You can buffer it.
And then you decide what to do with it.
But you don't get to choose.
Yeah.
Right.
So when you see things that are horrific, and you feel things that are absolutely disgusting or dreadful, you got to find a way to live with it and wash it out and not let it affect your life. That can be difficult.
Yeah, very.
Very. Awesome. Good stuff, Pat. So let's go to Jamie, and then we are, I think, a little overdue for a break.
Yes.
So, okay, they're dancing. All right, let's go. What you got, Jamie?
Here it comes.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, Jamie.
I had actually had a reading with Mike long time ago before I ever met him. And I can say from personal experience, it was a really great experience having that reading with you. And thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
my question to you is, this is going to sound weird, but stereotypically, readers are females or they're gay men. So what's it like in your experience being a man and doing this for a living when people are like, but you don't fit what we think you're supposed to be?
Years ago,
that's a good question.
I'm laughing.
I know, I told you I'd get you a question.
I'm laughing because I went to a fair with Pat in Pittsburgh, PA. And like always, there's many women, very few men. And men are looking at me like I'm a slab of beef, number one. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And I walked at a break. I walked over and I looked at Pat. I said, Pat, why? Why is this happening? What's going on? She goes, Mike. I said, what? She goes, in the professional world, most readers are female because a lot of what you are doing incorporates the feminine side of life. I said, okay, fine. She goes, most of the men tend to be gay. And I went, oh, okay. And I don't have any problem with that. Please, for anybody that's watching, listening, or otherwise, I have absolutely no problem with anybody's sexual preference ever, ever. I talk with everybody. I love them all the same. But it struck me that I am an odd duck doing what I do. And people at times don't know how to react to that. And your question is spot on because, number one, if I could say this, Pat, don't take offense. Pat is old school reader, okay? Dyed in the wool, old school reader. All of us, don't take offense at this either, Heather. Jamie, Brenda, and I are more of a little bit of a newer age. Heather is on this other end of the spectrum to where Pat's old school. Heather is, really on the left side. I'm not an old school reader. I really am not. Mm-hmm. And I am not a traditional reader. I talk with people. I work with people. I give them the hands. Here's how it is. But let me help you from a loving kind of perspective, which most people do expect from, somebody that's not straight or somebody that is of a different sexual preference. Fine. So they sit and they're like, am I allowed to ask you anything? Knock yourself out. I don't find any difficulty with it because I've become, as Pat had said, I've become very comfortable with or Brendan said, I became very comfortable with myself, 8 years ago. And especially in the last 5, since I've written a book and I've been out and traveling. Here's the way it is. Oh, just reminds me very quick. You were talking about being out in public. It is ironic, because Heather had asked this question, to finish up that. It is ironic I have grown to me enough in what I do that now I see the person that I'm looking at, and at times almost a fuzzy image that overlays like those old transparencies that you would use for the overhead display. It overlays for a moment, and that tells me more about what they feel and a different aspect of them. Sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's not, sometimes it's like, oh my God. But you walk through the mall and you look at people and you're like, okay, well, you, and yeah, I'm going to walk all the way over there from you, and you, yeah, come give me a hug. And
hey, Heather.
Well, when I met you, Michael, I remember that I said you gave me your hand, like you're.
I did. I was trying to be so polite.
I'm a hugger. Come on now.
I was trying to be so polite because I'd never met and I didn't want to offend any female, And she goes, "What the hell's this? Give me a hug."
I love it.
And Pat's the same way.
And I'm like that with everybody. Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah,
Pat's the same way.
Heather, I think they're saying we're the bookends. I'm the old you. We're the bookends. We keep them alive. Okay?
You are. And I mean that. I mean that, honest to God, politely, professionally. In different aspects of metaphysical culture, when you say the crone, it is meant as the most polite, respectful term that there is.
Yeah,
And that's
I
Pat,
agree with that.
you know?
I totally agree.
And then you talk about fairy magic, and that's the little redhead down there, you know?
Yep.
My nickname is actually Red.
Yeah. All right, Jamie, I apologize. I went all over the place with that.
No, you did good. I mean, you are a unique person in the reader world. So I just wondered what that was like, what that experience was like, getting your point across or getting people to trust you, you know. And I think you answered it.
Can I chime in on that, please? Yeah, I think sure. Michael appreciated Michael. And, you know, it takes a certain degree of inner knowing to say, this is it.
Yep.
This is the way I am. You know, love me, hate me, I don't care, but you will respect me. And when he got to that point where you all know, we know what we know. And we can't change what we know. It's just there.
No, we can only.
Right, and I think
Michael got
Michael has exactly, and I think Michael has gotten really comfortable with that in the last 3 to 5 years, especially. That's what I feel.
Yeah.
And I think on that note, we need to take a 3-minute break, and we can come back and finish this conversation and start our conversation about gut feelings. We'll be right back. And we're back. Welcome back. My name is Brenda Lynn, and I am hosting Terra Turas tonight, our roundtable metaphysical conversation. We are here with Michael Peterson, Jamie Gibson, Heather Lynn, and Reverend Pat Bears. And we just got done grilling Jamie and Michael in the hot seat. And we are, and Michael's dancing. And we are about to discuss now our little topic for the last half hour here, just a little less than a half hour of our program. And we're going to talk about that gut feeling you get. This borders a little on what is intuition and what is like being straight psychic, or how do you go from that gut feeling to that, more psychic place. So we want to talk about what happens when we get that gut level feeling and what we do with it. And so, I want to, I did a workshop called Co-Creating with the Divine years ago. And so I went into the archives of my computer and pulled out my Keep It Simple Self. And I used to teach people to kiss it, keep it simple self, KISS. It was a term I used for something that I'll share when we go into it more in depth the week after next. But right now we're talking about that. And this is a topic that Michael came up with for tonight's discussion. So I think I'd like to start with you, Michael.
See what she does? I put in a nice screen and she bounces right over. I'm like, fine. See? When people ask me about their gut feeling, I tell them it's that area, and it's referenced actually by a few different people or a few different things. We say gut feeling, and it's like down around in your gut, that feeling that you get. People that do any kind of martial arts, they call it ki or chi, to where it resides about 2 inches behind the navel. But it's all referencing that same part of the body that has this energy, a power to it. So when we talk about gut feeling, it's that part that when you first feel a response to something, somebody will ask you a question, or what do you think about this, or something happens. It's that in your gut, and that first emotion or that first thought, to me, is that gut feeling. And ironically, your gut feeling is hardly ever wrong. The only time that I found that people find that it's wrong is when they ad-lib. As in, when they turn around and they feel a particular thing and go, oh yeah, but it must really mean this. No, right. Stop, back up. This is what you first felt. And most often, what happens, people will feel something in their gut, and then this horrible, wonderful machine upstairs called the brain disagrees, saying, prove it. And in that split second, you can neither prove nor disprove what you felt, that gut feeling. So you don't know whether to act on it or not. That just takes time in order to be able to balance yourself out. And then as you work with it, that becomes more the intuitive of what a lot of readers will say is either intuitive or part of who they truly are.
Right. Yeah, and there is actually if you study the chakras at all, where your gut is literally is called the solar plexus. That's a chakra, and it is also considered your power center. And it represents your power, like your power to choose. Am I going to send it up into consciousness, or am I going to just default into the same old, same old? Mm-hmm. That's where the choice lies. And you have, it's yellow, actually. My favorite, I have a few favorite crystals. Maybe Jamie, you can talk about this a little bit. My favorite crystals for the power center, one is citrine. I love citrine because it's also a crystal of abundance, and it's sparkly and it's pretty, and I like pretty power. So, because it can be pretty. So, yeah, that's one of my favorite ones. I also like some of the red stones for your power center too. So, what do you have on that for tonight?
Me?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know who you were talking to. You kind of said everything I was going to say. Of course. Yeah, no, I talk to clients about this a lot. And again, that goes into the whole thing that I was saying before, where I like to help people learn their own intuition, to start to trust themselves so they don't have to be leaning on psychics all the time. But I always tell them, take a breath. Where did this start? What did it feel like in your stomach area, in your solar plex area, just like Mike said? Pay attention to that, because the brain is just fear-based when you get into that kind of thing. It's trying to trip you up because it's trying to protect you. And a lot of times it's not doing a very good job, but it thinks it is. So that's why I'm like, stay with the solar plex area, stay with the gut, because you'll never be wrong. That's your intuition. It's the fight or flight space, from caveman days. People knew what they were supposed to do. But yeah, citrine's a great stone. Yellow calcite's also a really nice solar plex chakra stone to go with too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love yellow calcite. It is that is a soft crystal too. Mm-hmm. I love calcite. It's a soft, gentle kind of I don't know. It feels good, and I think that's good for calcite. Would you agree with this? Like, it's good for like if somebody is exercising too much egoic power, that's a good crystal for them to have. Because
it's very soothing
energy.
Yeah, all the calcites are pretty soothing stones. So one of my favorite things to do, to help balance my chakras sometimes when I'm doing that kind of meditation, is to use a colored calcite for each chakra.
Yes, I do too.
Clear. Well, of course you do.
Of course we do. Yeah. Yep, it's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite crystals, and my crystals are in Florida, so when I get them here, I'm going to have to show them to you here on Zoom, so that you can.
Yeah.
Pat.
That's me with that.
Awesome. Pat, what do you have?
I think that's probably the most frequent question I get. How do you know? And I said, well, first of all, if your best friend were in this situation and they said, well, I feel like, what would you tell them? Would you tell them to go with their feelings, or would you tell them run the other way? I said, it takes time, and you have to trust that. I always tell people, if your head and your gut or your heart are arguing, please trust your gut, because people can mess with your head all day and all night long. They can make you think black's white and green's yellow, And it's just something that takes time and practice. But if you learn to just go with the flow, and I asked them, does this feel exaggerated to you, or does this feel sensible to you? And I was like, oh, never thought about that part. Just kind of,
I love that you say, if you got something going on in your head or your heart or your gut, you trust the gut, because your head is going to tell you all kinds of stories, but your emotions can get a little carried away too. The emotions can try to tell you other stories and get you, swinging in another direction, which can be totally impractical. The gut doesn't think. The gut doesn't feel. It just is. So I think that the gut, it always knows. It's always got the facts straight. The heart and the mind are going to totally pervert it all, right? But the gut knows. It doesn't have any attachments like that. Yeah.
And if you ask them, when, well, what makes the most sense? Usually it's that feeling coming from the gut. Because they're trying to justify if they're going with the head. They're trying to justify.
Exactly.
And the gut doesn't do that.
Nope. The gut doesn't pervert anything. It's just raw, real truth that hits you right there. Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah. That's a really awesome. It's a really awesome way to put it, Pat. I like that a lot. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Heather.
Well, you guys covered an awful lot of it. I mean, it's just, to me, if it's quiet. That intuition is not, when I first became aware, because again, you don't know you're doing these things. I didn't know I was doing these things when I was doing them long ago. But when I became aware, I realized that the intuition, it was the quick, it was the immediate, it was that feeling that came through, that thought that came through without even thinking about it. When I would be halfway out of my mouth with the question and it just, you already know the answer. It's just there. If it's yelling and loud and in your face, for me, I found that that's usually fear. It's my mind that's like not believing, not trusting. It's not coming from the gut when it's screaming at you. Bah! No, that's not the gut. You feel it. It's a feeling, like you said, inside. And a lot of other things come with it, the goosebumps, the truth and everything. But yeah, it's really just that very soft, but immediate response that you get.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah. Very true. What else do we have on that? Anybody else have a comment?
Oh, I do.
Of course you do.
People.
What do you got?
I try to tell people when they're starting to work with their gut feeling, a couple of different things. The gut feeling, and we all agree, gets the information. It's like, this is a no BS thing. Whack, here it is. And then it's up to us to decide, are we going to listen and work with that, or ad lib, or, oh, I don't buy that at all. And that determines a lot of things, but it's also the basis of what readers do. For most people, though, I try to remind them, as Pat mentioned, you've got your gut, you've got your heart, you've got your head. The brain, if people think about it, the brain cannot process properly an emotion. It thinks. It does adding, subtracting, spatial, whatever. It works with input. And it thinks about what to do next. Because when we laugh, the only time that your head is going to feel anything is if you laugh too hard and you get a headache. But if you're in love, if you have a heartbreak, if you are happy, if you are sad, it's always in the heart area and sometimes in the midriff or in the gut. And that's what I try to tell people, just like Jamie, everybody else. Pay attention to what your gut is saying and then decide what to do with it.
Yeah, I always, whenever I was, especially when I was starting, and still, for myself, I'm, I think we're all intuitive for ourselves, but I don't think we're all totally psychic for ourselves. I mean, I can't see 2 feet in front of my own face, really, for myself. Yeah, so I need to call one of y'all.
Hold on.
And so, what's that?
Check this out. You mentioned that. In all of the readers that I have ever spoken to, worked with, or met, Pat Beers is the only one that can correctly read for herself. And she and I spoke about this many times, and here's what she told me. If you are going to read for yourself, you get a recording device and you set it down just like it was somebody you're reading for. And you read to that device like you were reading for someone else, because no one can be that objective for themselves. She's the only one. Honest to God, she is the only one. And I tell people this Everywhere I go. Pat is the only one I've ever met that could read for herself and to do it correctly.
Wow, that's awesome.
And
I used to,
you don't always get what you think you're going to get. If you truly treat yourself as though you're reading for someone else, you're not going to get exactly what you thought.
Well,
right. And
I have a hard time reading my children. I just do.
Yes.
I mean, I know if they're going to be in trouble or something, but to do an actual reading for them, it just doesn't work. I've tried, and they both look at me like you're crazy, but they know that I'm doing it for other people. They're just like, no, it's not hitting. And I know as I'm doing it that it's not right. So I just don't even try it.
You got to get out of mom mode. You got to step out of mom mode and just treat them as though they're any other client.
Yeah.
I don't tell the kids anything unless they ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Pat.
Well, I like that. I like that idea of the recording device because I used to do automatic writing, and then I did feel like I could read for myself. Actually, I would turn around and look at what I wrote, and not remember writing it down or not remember getting it. However, when I am day to day, I get intuitive hits in my gut, but I still have to look for where's the confirmation here for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When I do a reading for myself, I feel, like I have to do automatic writing. I like your idea for a recording. I might do that actually. But day to day, I can't read for myself. I have to go with that intuitive hit. And then I have to see, where does that take me? Or what's the confirmation here? I got to see confirmation. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I don't even know why I'm here, Brenda. You're saying everything I say, so I'm just a floating head.
They made that comment to me earlier tonight because I've got a black shirt and a black background, and they're like, Michael, all people are going to see is your head going like this. I'm like, okay, fine. I ran out of shirts.
And it's a good thing that your chair isn't black.
What's that? What did you say?
Who? Pat? Or me?
Both.
I said it's a good thing that your chair isn't black too. At least that's lighter. Because otherwise you would be a floating head and microphone and earphones. You wouldn't be able to see your earphones.
And that's what I thought when we first started. I thought, oh my gosh, Michael's fading into the background.
Yes.
All we see is his face.
And now, on channel 13.
It's a shame we never have any fun,
Yeah. Well, we've got Mercury is still in the shadows, I think, isn't it, Jamie? Yeah. Shadows of retrograde.
Yeah, until Friday, the 16th.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we have Venus going direct at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what all that means, but I'm just going to tell you. You got hit. It's jolting. Yep. That's what my gut says. Yeah.
Yep.
Heather's being awfully quiet,
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking about, you guys are talking about reading yourself and stuff. And I do, like what Brenda said, I do the automatic writing. I feel like I have good success with. I love the recorder idea, but I have, and I like to try different readers. And so once a month I get a reading or have a healing session with somebody, just because I like to see how other people read and what comes through. And most of the time, there's been some things that have been very interesting. Earlier this year, I had a reading that everything she said, I was like, what? And then it was like, boom, it happened like this. And it was crazy. But I have a standing monthly healing session with one of my dear friends that it's just nice to have that validation sometimes in your own life, because it's easy to trust what comes through for other people. Mm-hmm. But I don't always trust, and I'm learning more and more because I just keep getting more and more validation, and they're like, do you really need validation again, Heather? Come on. Like, you're being ridiculous. Now you're just being ridiculous. So it's nice to have that too. It's nice to have somebody that you trust, that you can talk openly with about, you know, doing work in the cosmos and have it make sense to them. And they're not like Michael said, turning white as a ghost.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like therapist, you know, so why wouldn't we have that check-in? But I also have many clients who'll call me and they're like, I knew you were going to say all these things. I said, I know you knew, but you just need to hear it from somebody else, right? And they're like, yeah.
Hey, Brenda.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember way back when we were talking about reading, and I had mentioned that there's just about once every 2 or 3 years I'll get a reading done, and I go to one particular person.
Right.
That's Pat.
Yeah.
She's my go-to lady.
Yep. We all have to have one, that's for sure, because it's you know, we gotta at some point, like Heather was talking about, and I think Jamie touched on, we gotta start to trust our gut. And that's a lot about what our work is about. It's about teaching people to trust themselves and trust their gut, because when they can trust themselves, and they can trust others around them, because they're choosing those people. Mm-hmm. Jamie and I were just having a conversation similar to this last night on Facebook, you know, but it really is about that gut feeling, is really about trusting that and going with it, even when the head is trying to talk the gut out of it, and the heart is trying to say, oh, no, you don't feel that, because this feels so good this way, you know. Mm-hmm. It's important, and that's it's important that we do that. So that validation, Heather, it does start to you do start to get confidence in that, whether it's your reading life or your personal life, your professional life or your personal life. It gets better and better and better. And we are going to be talking a lot more about gut feelings and the gut intuition, and how that translates into psychic ability and just basic intuition. The week after next week, we are going to have a special gratitude presentation that we're going to bring you. We're going to talk about gratitude and the importance of gratitude, fitting as this is the gratitude month and Thanksgiving next week. So we'll be doing that. And then the following week, we will come back, and Pat will be all well, and we will be grilling her in the hot seat. And then we will continue this conversation on our gut feelings. So I just want to thank Heather and Reverend Pat Bears and Jamie for being here, and Mike also. And with Mike, I want to say thank you for making this happen, and for having that light bulb go off, you know, for Terra Turas.
Honest to God, I appreciate that. It means the world to me. But if it weren't for all of us, I could make the most pretty thing and put it online and do whatever. But if it weren't for all of us in here, this wouldn't have come about. So honestly, thank all of you for being here.
Yep. So with that, we will see you next week. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Good week.